And can you make sure we both look handsome on the cameras?
And pumped. And that the camera is
I'm
on.
a little sweaty and...
Are you going to be sitting? Well, tell me when you're ready.
This is actually... whatever.
He gets the comfy spot.
Do you think I have the comfy spot? I think you're
Better
crazy.
than mine.
Testing Tyler McTyler.
Test. To agree to disagree on this. I was like, yeah, but you can agree to disagree with me, but I can't agree to disagree with you. Because no matter what, I got to follow the rules of the lockdown. Yeah. So I can't agree to disagree.
Yeah, I can't just go about and do my thing.
Yeah, if we could do whatever we want, then we could agree to disagree. But in that sense, since I follow your rules, you can agree to disagree with me, but I can't agree to disagree with you.
Your will on
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, so no, we can't agree to disagree.
We can agree to disagree. You think,
as long as you do what I want.
You think people should be locked up in cages for simple drug possession, and I think no, but I still will get locked in a cage if I possess simple drugs.
Exactly, so we can't agree to disagree. Yeah, that's what that argumentation
We just have to agree that it's going to be your way.
Exactly. That sounds like marriage.
Yeah, kind of. Megan, you didn't hear that?
No, she did not. Okay. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Can't sit cool on this either.
It's a weird sofa.
Okay.
We're fine. It's a podcast.
All right.
It's mostly audio, let's be honest.
Yeah. All right, we're back. We're in the gym if you're watching. If you're listening and you hear the echo, that's the echo of the new StrongFit HQ.
We have socks on. Everything is good.
Socks are on today. Shoes, it's going to be
No, let's not get weird.
Trained today.
Yes.
So we have his first seminar here at HQ tomorrow.
That is true. So what you see in the background is the new gym. We're getting closer to finishing.
Yep. Turf was
One
laid.
step at a time.
Turf was laid 2 days ago. We found a way to save 75% of the price.
Probably more than that even. Yeah. We have the bench. Actually, we have a real
legit
bench.
Competition bench. That was Julien's gift to me and Richard for 2 years of benching on like little toy benches.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that flames. Yeah, that flames.
Well, or the gym I was,
or
the global gym I was in Austria. If I wasn't at Das gym, the global gym I was in Austria had the same width benches. They were like maybe 8 inches wide. And so basically I would get on the bench and my shoulder blades are just on.
You put the one,
outside.
but not the other.
Yeah. So that's why I blame this current status of my bench. It's on you. So now he's like, can't blame me, I fixed it.
I have an actual bench for them now.
So tomorrow we're going to go through, we were talking just yesterday about filming some spots for the seminar anyways, and you were talking that you were going to maybe intro the seminar differently.
For once. Yeah, it's always a work in progress anyway.
Yeah. And so I think from an application standpoint, though, this is a good subject to dive in because you're going to frame a chunk of the seminar about it. I think to cover the basics on the podcast would be cool. Of the movement box.
Exactly. Because I think I'll frame the seminar now with the performance box and the movement box.
Yeah.
I think those will be really the two ways to frame the seminar because out of those I can do so much.
Yeah.
So why the box?
Why the box? So the movement box is the subject for today.
But why the box? Yeah, exactly. So, but why do I use a box? It's a visual representation, right, of the idea that I try to put forward. So first of all, I like the visual representation. It helps me whenever I think about a movement, or whatever, programming or whatever. Having that box reminds me of what needs to be done, stuff like that. And the box allows me to set constraints instead of objectives toward the movement. So that's why I like those two boxes so much.
Well, those type of visual representations too also require you to at all times look at the wholeness of the system.
Exactly.
Instead of going in like, well, you could really narrow down. Well, you see 76% by this is a little bit more effective at high output and this and that.
Right.
And at that point, if you can focus on that, but you're missing out on almost everything else.
And actually, that's a text you sent me from, I think it was Brett Weinstein, where he was, as usual, on target, where he was explaining that you cannot, where was the word he was
cannot
using?
optimize any single
part of a system without basically wrecking the whole.
Yeah.
That is one of the biggest issue I think that people don't understand, especially when it comes to body and training, is that exact part.
Yeah.
Is they think you can take the body and just, like it's like a Lego theory. You add small pieces until you have a big piece, right? You put all of that together, and then you're gonna try to optimize certain parts.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the critical mass theory. The idea of the critical mass theory is always the same, is that you have to look at the percentages of everything, but if one drops out, then the situation cannot happen. So it's more a matter of putting all the stuff back in than it is to pick one out. So most people, when they optimize, they take one thing, put it outside of the range of the others and therefore stop the critical mass reaction.
Yeah. Well, and if you're only using that one thing as your measurement of success, that's the issue, because then you can think that you're doing better
when you actually are
in
not.
the end, what's happening, all these other things are dropping off, which are going to give you the actual potential to expand outside of that.
Exactly, and this is why you see people after 6 weeks, they get 2 PRs on the bench. I was like, oh, I'm getting stronger. Yeah, but maybe you're getting stronger on the bench because you're not squatting. So if you're not squatting, that means your upper back doesn't get tired. If it doesn't get tired, you'll have more power for the bench. Or, like stuff like that. Your lower back is less tired. You do use the lower back on the bench. So suddenly you start to narrow down. Easy example. You do 3 sets of 10. It's very taxing. Then you do 3 sets of 8. Super taxing, more weight. Then you do 2 sets of 8. Suddenly you go like, ooh, I could go up in weight because I'm less tired. And then you go to 1 set of 5 and 1 set of 3. By the time you're at that 3 reps, you feel awesome.
Yeah.
You know why? Because you're not tired from doing so much sets, so many sets. You've reduced the volume so much that you feel awesome. And so of course, now that you feel awesome, you have more energy. You can put more into those 3 reps and you go, oh, look how much stronger I am. That's the solution.
Yeah.
What you forget is that all that structure and the build that you base through volume, you've cut completely. So now all you're going to do is 3 reps, 1 set of 3. And before you know it, you stalled because the structure went away and eventually you just can't, because you were not really progressing. What you were having is a trade-off.
Yeah.
You traded volume for intensity.
I think that's actually really important. Let me rephrase that. That rings very true for me and the things that I've done.
We all done it. We all have done that, man.
I was watching / bragging with one of the guys from the neighborhood was by and he was talking strongman stuff, and he was like, so what was your event? And I said, my best one was the log and stuff. And so many videos. So pulled up an old video of like my last log competition. He's like, whoa, you were way bigger then. Because I certainly was. Yeah. But you could see it right there. I was like, oh man, like I really put all my eggs into the bigger, stronger basket.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you're kind of left precariously perched on something you can't get hold onto. But I would also see that very often in endurance athletes as well, in coaching at the CrossFit gym. Is you would have people who running is a thing for a lot of people. It's a good form of meditation. It gives them peace. Yeah. For many, it's the only training that they do or have done for most of their lives. And so coming into a CrossFit gym to start training, they don't like that trade-off. Getting a little bit stronger may take something from their running.
And it will, by the way.
And it certainly will.
It will.
But in the end, your running, once there's more balance, your running will, your endurance will go up.
Because it's mostly what you see is like they, for example, they want to do a marathon. So they do a marathon in 6 hours. Okay, so I'm going to run more. And at first you cut it to 5 hours and 4 hours. Why? Because you're running. And before you were not running that much. So now you're getting better at the skill. And now you're actually capable of running a marathon without dying. So that means you can go faster, stuff like that. But eventually they go like, okay, so the solution is more. Yeah. More running. And then you get from 9, suddenly it's 4, it's like 4:02 to 3:58. Like, well, I'm still winning again by 4 minutes. But now you get at the stage where going a little bit faster requires your feet, your hips. And that's when the strength training or the lactate production comes in, like all that stuff comes in. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's when you get stuck because before, what had worked was just more running. Yeah. And now you need to switch because you've hit that. And that's a hard switch. Yeah. That's a hard switch. So you're trying to optimize a part of the system, and eventually you just run out of steam.
And so the movement box is definitely a piece of the Voltron effect that we talk about. Right. If it all fits in, everything's going to fit into all of that, so we'll always tie up that in a nice, neat bow. Right.
So I use that a lot when I want to do programming. Okay. When I look, not mine, but when I do mine, obviously. But from the beginning, people were asking me, for example, like old school CrossFit, we're talking like 7-8 years ago at regionals, all you saw was gymnastics on a bar and barbell movement, right? And so I was like, all right, but naturally you're going to create, everything is a trade-off. There's no problem per se when you do that, but they are trade-offs, and the trade-offs
you get good at those things.
You will get good at those things.
Until you don't.
Exactly.
And then doing more of those things is probably not the answer.
Right,
then, right?
Because remember, the body was never designed to do one movement only. That was never that.
So is that the essence of the movement box, kind of? We move those two things forward. At some point, we have to realize what else needs to be built in order to
it was a critical mass. So all the boxes represent one thing, which is critical mass. Critical mass, that idea. So, like the reaction is happening. Yeah. It's moving forward, right? Yeah. And if you look, going back to what we said, usually how do we screw it up? the reaction is happening. What do I mean by that? You know, when your training is going well, you're making progress. Nothing crazy, but it's feeling good. You're making progress. You're getting stronger. You're pounding yourself. But week after week, you can tell progress is happening.
Yeah.
What do? You pick one thing and you optimize that.
Yeah.
And then for 2 weeks, it works, and then you crash. We've all done it, right?
Yeah.
That's because you got out of the critical mass. So my idea was like, all right, how do I stay in that zone where the good stuff happens and don't go crazy? And because usually that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
So usually that feeling of everything is going well lasts about 2 weeks. And then you fuck it up.
When I get that feeling, maybe it's sabotage, but I'm like, man, I feel like I'm on borrowed time right now.
Exactly.
Things are feeling real good.
Let's capitalize on that.
I should crash my bicycle.
Exactly.
Like, that's kind of
right, exactly right. So whatever it is, you get 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to try to get that one web PR, you should not go for.
Yeah.
Whether it's crashing your bicycle, whether it's like, let me overeat until I'm sick.
Let's try to get big this month.
Let me train every single day because it's going well.
It's going well.
Let's not sleep ever again. Let's just pump. So whatever pre-workout I'm taking, let me double that.
Yeah. Overtraining or under recovery, over recovery, and doing that enough, like all of these.
But let's just fuck it up.
Fuck it all up.
2 weeks, right? Yeah. So I was like, all right, what if? Not necessarily that I could, but what if I could find that zone and stay in it? That was the critical mass idea. I was like, it's that zone where let me stay in that zone. Yeah. How would I define that zone to stay in it? And that's what the performance box was about. So how would I find that zone? I was like, well, first of all, we're gonna have to define what movement is.
Yeah.
Easy enough. And you realize that very few people are actually doing it. They're not defining movement, the human body. So then I started to go at the performance box. So movement box, not performance. Movement box. Yeah, correct me because I'll say it again.
I'll catch it. Well, sometimes I don't know if you're referring back to the other one.
No, actually, that was just me fucking it up. So movement box. So first was like, all right, so first things first. What type of movement do we have? Easy enough question, right? I started with that. And so way back in the day, we're talking like, I don't know, 8 years ago now. I was like, all right, so if I take movement, I can really divide it in 3 categories. So movement is more than those 3 categories. I just did that just so I can, if I look at a sheet of programming, I'm like, what types of movement am I going to see? Yeah. So I'm not going to define movement with those 3, categories because movement is far more complex than that. It's usually a mix of all 3, let's be honest.
But based on the things you're going to see floating up in programming,
right, again,
you got to give it you got to categorize something.
Something, just so I know when you're starting to step outside of the box.
Common terminology.
Right, exactly. Right. You still need that because then I can say like, look, the reason you're getting away from critical mass is because you're losing this and this and this. So if I categorize movement, it was what I saw right away was a load, a carry, or a hold. Right? So I don't know if you remember the Dan John when he said there's a squat, a hinge, I think he said hinge, pull, push, and carries. Yeah. Those are the types of movement that was for him. Yeah. And I was like, right, but push, pull, squat, hinge is a loading movement, if you look. So it's more static. Yeah. Carries are different. And I was like, okay, but what about holds? Because holds can be anything from isometric, but it's also balancing. Right, so there is balance is an important part of movement as well. So the first thing I did was to divide it in load, carry, and hold. Okay. Because any movement will be most likely a combination of those 3. Right, so that was an important idea. But if you look, again, like just to go back, I like that example of 8 years ago because I think the CrossFit Regionals were a very good example. The comparison CrossFit Regionals versus CrossFit Games was a very good comparison of the box. The CrossFit Games was the box. There was a mix of everything. Long distance. Yeah. We're going to go over that for energy systems, but you had strongman stuff, more toward carries. You had static events. You had the typical CrossFit Metcons, but you really had a mix of everything. So I thought like the original CrossFit idea was a CrossFit Games. But if I looked at the regionals back then, which I bitched about every time, I was like, guys, all there is, they changed it after. Like a year after that, they did dumbbells and all that stuff.
There was much more variation.
Right, but for like 3 years, 4 years straight, all you had is barbell and gymnastics. Yeah. That was it. Nothing else. And most gymnastics on a bar outside of muscle ups. And so I was like, but there's an imbalance in that programming. And so that's when the whole
Which
thing started.
if you're looking at just for a sport,
Right.
that's just going to be a sport that you're going to run off. Yeah, who gives a fuck? There's all
But
sorts
as
of
a training
issues
system,
with
right.
football or
Yes.
basketball that's going to create
Right.
weird little things.
Exactly.
If that's how the sport's going to be and run forward, fine. But it doesn't even really align with what the next step of the sports was going to be. And
yeah.
since the whole thing is underpinned by what's supposed to be
A
a
training
very effective,
system.
balanced, and good for everyone
Right.
training system, it needs to be more multifaceted than that.
But it has to be because it's supposed to be also a training system. So this is always the conversation we get into when we talk about CrossFit. Is they go like, well, look at football, look at basketball. I'm like, but that's a sport. Like CrossFit was never was not a sport first.
Yeah.
It was a training system, a way to change the way, and it did. Functional fitness was applied, was built and applied. That was the goal of CrossFit at the beginning. That was the goal of Greg Glassman, which was fitness. Health, all that stuff. So to me, I still refer to CrossFit as the training system that is designed to better functional fitness, and it did, toward health, which it did as well. Then the CrossFit Games, that's a sport that's different. But so that was always the problem between the two, and I think the mistake came out of not distinguishing the two early on.
Yeah. So you went in looking to try to balance that out, kind of from looking at programming, if you will, just for the competitive side, right? For the sport, where you're looking at saying, God, there's these gaps here. You would have to have. You would have to have something to fill in these gaps. Even for those athletes are going to need it if this is what they're training for.
Right. First of all, there was that, but there was also for the common people, because at the time, if you remember, whatever was happening at regionals
was happening
during with the affiliates. Like people don't necessarily are maybe young to CrossFit or stuff like just got in. If you just got in right now, I'm sorry, you did not see the best part of CrossFit.
Yeah.
Like it's a rough time to just coming into CrossFit. But if you look at the regionals like 7-8 years ago, that was being applied at the affiliate level. And that's when I was like, no, that you can't do that. So when it was just the games, I was like, sure. First of all, we're going to have to train the athletes differently than just doing that, because if you just do that too repetitively, you're going to break them. But on top of it, if it's being applied at an affiliate level, then we need to establish that just doing one type of movement is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what...
So how would you fill in something like that?
Right, so the idea was, a load, carry, and hold. Right, so load can be what? Load is the typical stuff where your feet don't move. So you have thrusters to gymnastics,
Basically,
to static strength.
The closing and opening of some of those angles, really any of those joint angles with you're in a static position, in a stationary position.
Basically. So counting even gymnastics and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So that's why I was, the loads were that. So that counts also toward powerlifting, for example, the squat, the deadlift, the bench. Those are all loading movement.
Yeah.
So, and then you go toward carries. Well, that was easy. That's 1.5 step. So lunges are technically, when you come back, it's a load, but when you start moving, it's a carry, stuff like that. Hold was anytime there's an isometric contraction or some kind of balancing.
Okay.
So simple enough. But look, and by the way, that doesn't mean like you should have the same percentage of all three. It was just in your programming, there should be some of the three.
Yeah.
It's important. So that's why you see like the overhead yoke carry where I liked it right away, because it was a whole overhead. So there was a definite isometric and balancing stuff while it was a carry. So to me, it was a very good exercise that contributed for both.
Was holds and carries specifically the thing that you saw the least of?
Yeah.
In CrossFit? I mean, that was the...
And if you remember, Dan John said he could fix anyone with carries. Back in the day, we're talking. Yeah. Dan John was the first strength and conditioning coach for CrossFit. He was a great strength and conditioning coach overall, and then he's one of the early makers of CrossFit. And he said he could fix anyone with carries. Why? Because a carry forces you to work anti-rotationally speaking. It's making those hips move, it's forcing you to turn, to stabilize, so to hold whatever weight you're carrying at the same time. So it does a number of things that you just cannot do any other way. And it exposes unilateral weaknesses, and the act of carries is about as basic as it gets. You know what I mean? Like we're going back to, you're building a hut somewhere, you're gonna have to carry stuff.
Well,
it's one of those foundational movements.
That's the thing that would occupy more of a person's like weekly physical output.
It should.
As far as like during the time span in which our body was designed, if you will, like during whatever amount of time that is, like
farming,
like farming, hunting, scavenging, whatever it is that you're going to do is going to be a lot of.
By the way, hunting, you kill a boar, you're gonna have to carry it back.
This is the thing I always like. My old man would go out hunting, and it would like almost get dark. He'd drop one before, right before it gets dark out, and I'm like, dude, now you gotta get this fucking thing out of here. Like I'm not shooting my gun unless I've got like 2 hours of light left. Like there's
but a deer weighs how much?
I don't even know. I guess to be truth, I don't know. It's
like
it's a motherfucker to get it into a truck by
yourself. It has
yourself.
to be close to 90 kilos a deer.
Yeah,
maybe
probably.
it's way more than that. But for the one I saw in New Zealand, it was that shit that had to be like at least 80 kilos.
Well, and ours are roaming through cornfields eating the same shit our cattle are eating, so they get fucking big.
Exactly. No, but imagine even if it's 80 kilos or whatever, a boar is probably 80, 90 kilos. You put that on your shoulders, it's a sandbag weighing 90 kilos that you carry for the next 2 miles.
Yeah, and my friends that do some real rugged hunting, that they go out, hunt elk, moose, things like that.
So those are
and
bags.
that is some shit where you are not getting your truck in there. The fact is, most of the land we hunt deer for, I can get my truck within a couple hundred meters of where I got to be, and so dragging it you can kind of do. But you kill a fucking elk, or you kill it, or 500 years ago.
But still, by the way, a 200 meter, 90 kilo sandbag carry is no joke.
Yeah, go for it.
It's still not fun. And by the way, at the end of the day, when you walk, the importance of carry. Because we're talking functional fitness, not talking CrossFit. The podcast is about functional fitness, which in a way includes powerlifting, strongman, all that stuff. So that's
whatever tools that you use to get a form of fitness that is functional.
To be a strong human being. So we talk about CrossFit a lot because how could you not? But the fact is we are in functional fitness, including strongman and powerlifting.
Yeah. I don't know why we talk about CrossFit a lot. It's because I still think it is the best whole system for the average person that includes, because it's supposed to include everything. It's supposed to.
It's the best thing that happened to fitness in the last 50 years, 70 years.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. Like Greg Glassman changed the way we look at fitness.
Yeah.
He revolutionized in just 10 years.
Well,
a bit more, 15.
In that, I want to say, like when we look at what CrossFit is, there was, the constantly varied functional movements. All of that was.
It was random at first. Let's be honest. They did say random.
But it was supposed to be that, though, like to have everything.
Yep.
And then the scope got narrowed for the sake of competition. I think.
Yeah, for the sake of the sport.
I think also maybe there's some gaps in education in that where that wasn't very effectively communicated. That the fitness methodology is not.
I will go a bit
just
further.
this.
I think there was no evolution of the training system. I think the second the CrossFit Games started, the second one, 2008, from there on, CrossFit stopped evolving. Mm-hmm. So weights got heavier.
Yeah.
Guys, women got bigger.
What happened on the competitive level was that the output that we thought was possible got 10x'd. In fucking 5 years. It's like, what in the fuck is happening?
And the strength in women got 10x'd. Like stuff that we didn't think I never thought I'd see women snatching 90 kilos as a baseline at the CrossFit
It's
Games.
like a fundamental requirement.
Yeah.
Whereas
Like
you're not even in the conversation.
I still remember when Lindsay Valenzuela snatched 90 kilos. Yeah. And everybody went, oh my
Holy
God,
shit. Yeah.
what just happened?
Yeah.
Now it's like, for how many reps?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what so that's why we talk about CrossFit, because they did bring something. But I think when the 208 happened, CrossFit stopped evolving, at least as a training system. Yeah. The sport evolved in the weights, but not really in the idea so much. So there was a stop in the evolution. And by the way, the 208 are still my favorite games to watch.
Yeah.
Those were fun to watch.
Yeah.
That's the shit you like, I want to do. I guess outside of the last two workouts, those are shits you go like, I want to try that. Like running uphill with a sandbag.
It's the dirty fucking rough sport.
Yeah,
it's not so polished.
Running a hill with the thing, and then all that stuff, you go like, yeah, that looks
well, maybe
really
that's
fun.
the same thing that drew me to strongman as a kid, watching Kazmaier flip over cars. Or
you know what did it for me? Remember when they were loading the back of the pickup truck?
With the...
And they had like chicken grill, or like they had like they were throwing like random shit in the back of
it. It was just hunks of shit.
Yeah, like they had literally like the chicken wire.
Yeah.
And then they had like some like a fridge or a motor. I think it was a motor maybe, or some shit like that they had to put. And Kazmaier is screaming the entire time.
Yeah.
But not even like throwing the shit like 2 meters away from the stuff.
Yeah.
Just in the back, and the whole thing is moving. Like, whereas the other guy is struggling, and Kazmaier's like,
Well, and everyone else is trying to pick it up in a way where it's not going to poke or hurt them.
And
he goes, no. He's like, whatever parts of this that cut into my skin,
Yeah, that means
whatever's
I can
the
hold
fastest.
it stronger. Yes, and he's throwing it for a meter away, and I was like, that dude is a god of strength.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of stuff that always attracted me.
Yeah.
Like strongman, I don't like nearly as much what he became today.
Yeah.
Because it's basically
Very static.
It's powerlifting with all objects.
Yeah.
Which is a lot
And
less
the objects
fun.
are less odd now.
Yeah, on top of it.
Yeah.
Whereas when I see the 90s for the world's strongest men, where they were the safe, the this, the that, you go like, that looks weird to lift. I can't wait to try.
Yeah.
It just looks fun.
Yeah.
So those are my favorite times around there. But anyway,
So let's talk movement box. What to do with it? As
Yeah,
far as
right.
as far as like
that means-
if you're looking at your programming.
look at your programming. That means you see mostly loading.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see carries, for example? If no, well, okay, then we
That's
need
the
to put
piece.
some. Right.
You said the ratio might be different. Is
Yeah,
that,
it's okay. You
does
can
that
do
just
mostly
depend
loading.
on where you're deficient? Like
Yes, obviously.
so you want to come in. So let's say you're let's say you're doing a lot of squatting and deadlift. You're powerlifting, right? Out of the blue.
You're powerlifting. So let's say you squat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat, I'm like, oh, what's your yoke carry? Why? Because through the yoke carry, I'm trying to know if your upper back is strong enough to handle the weight you're squatting.
Yeah.
Most people always think like the weight is being carried by the hips and the core and everything, but actually the barbell sits on your upper back first.
Yeah.
So that means that's what's going to start
Yeah.
to get cranked and pinned first is your upper back. And if your upper back is not strong enough to handle the weight, everything else is screwed. And imagine if your upper back is not strong enough on one side versus the other, then it's even worse. So now like you have the one side that starts to collapse. So like that elbow starts to drift toward the ribs. No one is going to squat with an uneven bar. So that means you have to shift your hip
shift,
a
or the
certain
other
way
side
to make
closes.
sure the bar is straight. And so now you're transforming the position of your body in order for the bar to be even at max weight. What could go wrong?
Probably not.
Exactly. I'm sure it'd be just fine. Like that dude that I saw at the powerlifting competition.
Yeah.
So, right. So that means that I make you do yoke carries. For example, can you yoke carry your squat? If you can't, stop squatting. Start yoke carrying.
Absolutely.
Because that means that your structure cannot handle the weight you're squatting, especially your upper back and all that stuff. So I want a yoke carry that is 150% of the back squat. Because then I know you're safe.
This movement box will be hand in hand the tool that will go hand in hand with the other tool, the structure pyramid.
Of course.
Best pyramid.
Of course, because it's always the same idea.
Because everything is kind of the same idea.
the same
there.
idea,
so,
right.
So you're going to see like, all right, so this needs to be filled with holds, and then you can use the S pyramid to keep an eye, or holds or carries, sorry.
No, but let's look at the holds too. Yeah, let's look at hold. For example, the snatch.
Yeah.
Right, so you can snatch X amount of weight. Can you hold that X amount of weight overhead for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute?
Yeah.
Right, but if you can't hold the weight that you snatch overhead for, let's say, 20 seconds, then again, something in your body is not strong enough for that weight. So every time you lift that weight, it's dangerous.
And if you can't hold more than what you can catch
Exactly.
overhead,
It's
I mean, as
probably
far
not
as
a
like
good
what
idea.
the
So
stress is,
the
like, it
idea-
should be
yeah.
significantly more.
I would hope so. So my cue when it came to that was I was like, what's your snatch? Good. We're gonna put it on the yoke. Why? Because the weight is at the bottom, so it moves in a frontal plane. Instead of up and down, you'll be like, so it's gonna force you to stabilize, back and forward, which means more pecs and lats.
Yeah.
And some more internal torque. We're going to get to that in a second. To see if you have the strength to stabilize. So I'm going to take your snatch weight and then, okay, let's see if you can carry it 20 meters.
Yeah.
Because that means at least probably around 15, 20 seconds. But having to take a step forward and back means the entire rotation.
Yeah.
That means your core is going to have to stabilize all that. Can your shoulders take it? Your upper back, your core? Like there's a number of questions that will be answered just by you holding the weight overhead. And then carrying it on top of it will answer even more questions. Out of that, I'll know what's wrong. And in itself, the exercise will fix most of the issues you have with the snatch.
Well, that's what I found with movements that are with carries and holds, is that while there are there's imbalances right to left that I find all the time.
Always.
I think in a carry or hold, your tools for compensation are much less. You're not going to twist out. You're not going to, there's not a lot. So I still find I have so much success with people doing sandbag carries or regular yokes to even out, simply because the compensating muscle, the ones doing most of the work, can't hang for that long. And if you're really stressing it with those things, and I think that's important to emphasize, that with these specific low S tools like this for holds and carries, you can't just kind of fucking do a thing for 20 minutes of it. It needs to be really taxing. But I think if you do, your weak muscles will have to show up, and they will have to come up. And that's, as a matter of fact, that's probably one of the only ways that I've had success in bringing those things in. Isolation is good for learning engagement, but it's not going to close that gap as much as real
you have
heavy
to have
stress.
You have to have stress. And the only way you can have real heavy stress is with a low S.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll break.
Yeah, don't try to fix your imbalance with a heavy squat. It'll be a fucking nightmare.
Heavy squat is a test.
Yeah.
You can build with it, but you can build with it if everything goes well.
Yeah.
Like you can build, if you're going to build with a heavy squat, that means the system is already in place. Mm-hmm. You can't build the system with heavy squat, or at least not heavy squats alone.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people love the squat, and it's a great exercise, don't get me wrong. But if you use just that, chances are you're going to end up with imbalances left versus right. You're just not doing enough of a movement by doing that. And so that's why I like the carries.
And so there's a piece that I always found with people that would move from powerlifting into strongman, is that these carries, these body movement exercises, where you have to move yourself. It's really hard, and a lot of times that'll show up as conditioning, but it's often not. It's a totally new it's a new stimulus. It's a way different thing.
It's not conditioning, because they can't breathe.
You can't breathe because you don't breathe when you squat.
And you cannot breathe when you do a carry that really is challenging you, because all that anti-rotation, like your core just has to squeeze so hard to control that you can't breathe. In order to be able to breathe on a heavy carry, that means your core is extremely strong and can take the stress. And a powerlifter does not have it.
So the Conan's it's Conan's wheel. That's the that's one that I've done in competition. It's heavy, and it was fucking one of the most torturous things to do. And I still think you get kind of lucky based on how you start, because if it starts to buck on you, because I've seen guys it'll swing once and then just spit them 5 meters backwards. Like,
and I've seen a lot of people get hurt, by the way.
But I don't recommend the Conan's wheel as a way to do this. But I will say, like the Zercher yoke carry, because then it's on one place.
It's so uncomfortable too.
It's that thing you talk about, to trying to breathe through that stress.
It's very
when
hard.
It's here and it's heavy. There is nothing. We talk about heavy stimulus. I recommend you do that and go so heavy that you can't actually breathe in. And the option left is to bite the air. It's the only way you can get oxygen in. And when it is that heavy, like that is when you're getting shit done. And that still comes at almost no risk to you.
You'll know it's heavy enough because you basically go for one breath.
Yeah.
So people tell me how many meters, I'm like, no. How many breaths?
Yeah.
If it's really heavy, I might have 2 breaths. Sometimes I only have 1. That's how I know. That's how I count, really.
Yeah.
Literally.
And if you're able to go,
you can go heavier.
Yeah, it's just not
heavy. You can go heavier.
Yeah.
So that's how I would look at the ratio. But let's say like you have to do carries. So carries always include holds, obviously, because you have to hold on to the thing at least once a week. Like that should be a minimum for everybody. And like I do it twice. Yeah. At least twice a week, heavy carries. I think because you can do the farmer's walk, you can do the yoke carries, the Zercher yoke carries, the overhead yoke carries. You have the heavy sandbag carries.
And if you're doing it once a week,
you have the frame carry.
If you're doing it once a week, there's no place to do this light.
No. No way. And it's not an imam,
your fucking time.
a fucking imam, 20 minutes imam. You're not going for a mile. You are going for 20 meters. 25 meters, maybe 100 feet.
We've run into that a few times. I think part of it is because we've done some of those things every once in a while. Like
I don't.
Well, you and I did the crazy sled push one time.
One time in my life.
And
that wasn't by choice, by the way.
Well, no.
Yeah.
But it was not fun. We did it because it was a interesting challenge. We had flown. Yeah. Also, so a 1 mile fucking sled push, no sprint. We've done that once, And don't come at me every 3 months saying how you're doing. I was like, that's
every
not a part of my training.
They do it every week now, or every 2 weeks, and they go like, that's the training. I was like, no, you don't burn the question on a mile push on the sled. That's complete bullshit.
No,
like that's not what this is designed.
What you burn is the bottom of your fucking sled and need to replace it.
Right, exactly. But it's the same thing when they do yoke carries and they go for 400 meters or they go for a mile. I'm like, you're avoiding work.
Yeah.
Like you're good at suffering.
Yeah.
You're good at enduring stuff. So what you're doing is you're not challenging yourself into real heavy soul-crushing work, which you have to do as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just because I did it once, like strongman, it says in the name, strong, don't go light. Yeah. It's supposed to be heavy.
Well, we say at every competition, we'd be setting up, we'd complain about the warm-ups, or God, this one's real heavy. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes we'd all judge the weights in a competition and be like, this is unreasonable. Because you know what the answer always was? Well, it's not a weak man competition, so fucking buck up.
But you should still be able to warm up. That's a different problem. But and so if I'm going to go into the types of movement, I guess I should introduce also the internal torque versus external torque.
Yes.
I mean, it's a type of movement as well. Carries are in internal torque, and loading hold is always internal torque. Yeah. One of the reasons you should do them as well, because it's going to make your internal torque chain stronger. And some of the loading movements will be in external torque.
Okay.
So that becomes that has to be part of the box now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one corner, right? The box has 4 corners. Second corners, that was very important, was the planes of movement. That's what I complained about from the beginning, was that. Is like what I saw with the CrossFit was the over-reliance of, not the original idea of CrossFit, but that CrossFit Games idea, especially CrossFit Regionals idea, was that if you look at the planes of movement, they were all done in one plane of movement. And this is not to, by the way, this is not to criticize CrossFit, because
some of it there's necessary like execution components when things get into group fitness too.
No, but plus it would
up and down.
It's just allowing me to make an example, but I can use powerlifting the same way. I can use powerlifting against strongman. If you look at planes of movement, strongman has far more usage of the planes of movement than powerlifting does. Powerlifting does is you get everything is either a sagittal or you get the bench press, which is in a frontal, but you're still lying down. So it's still, I mean, so whereas strongman allows you to develop strength in all planes of movement. So that's my point. So I use CrossFit because they use so much stuff that it just makes it easier to talk about it. But the planes of movement, what do we have? We have the sagittal plane, up and down, frontal plane, which is toward and away from you, transversal, which is rotation, and then I use the median axle. So it's an axis. It's not a plane of movement, but I put it in there anyway. Median means what? Means left versus right.
Yeah.
So those are the 4 planes of movement. Technically, there are 3. I understand that. I'm just using 4.
That used to be my trick StrongFit question. I would always get tripped up on, because I'd be like, all right, so we have this, and I was like, wait, this one's made up.
Yeah. Well, technically, no, because it's an axis.
Well, it's not made up. It exists.
No. It exists as an axis, not as a plane.
If you look up, but what I'm saying is if you look up the traditional explanation of planes of movements, you're going to see 3, and then so make sure that this is added.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Whatever. I make up my own rules.
If you don't like it, this is how Julien will make you fail your StrongFit test.
Exactly. And if you don't like it, that's your problem. And so, if I look at a lot of training, I saw mostly sagittal plane. Everything is up and down.
Yeah.
Snatching, thrusters. It was always up and down. I was like, all right, if we do that,
they don't even bench.
Yeah. Well, they do better. No, but at the time, exactly. Yeah. Right. So we all got very offended by that. I don't do bodybuilding. I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But what about the guns?
That's why you're so small.
Yeah, probably. And so right away, I saw things mostly in the sagittal plane. I was like, yeah, but if we do that, you're going to have a lot of muscle that are going to be naturally underdeveloped.
And you're going to run into some like functional hang-ups now with your life, because you do have to exist in like if you're going to go in and do that to be good at that, and you're not going to get to the point where you exceed that, fine. But like in your life, walking, carrying your kids,
the frontal plane.
Well, and so when CrossFit wanted to round that corner and get out and play new sports.
Sorry, I'm not tired. We finished training,
but when they get out into that world where it's like, oh, you want to be able to play new sports, that was the piece I always saw. Is like, we're doing a lot of up and down in here,
right?
And it's actually going to make you less equipped for doing more functional.
Right. Let's say you do jiu-jitsu. You're going to have some frontal plane, like toward away from you. There's going to be a lot of stuff you have to pull toward you, right? Not pull, because if you look, the typical CrossFit stuff, like especially regionals, there was no pulling toward yourself. Yeah, rowing, but I'm talking like for strength and things like that. There was actually not that many. I know some people are going to say ring rows and stuff like that. Yes, I agree. But overall, the percentage was essentially up and down.
Yeah.
There was very little of toward and away from you. No benching. They put that layer on, which was good. So not a battle, but from the beginning, I was just raising my hand saying, guys, we are ignoring certain planes of movement. So that means that you have to look at your programming and go, is everything that I'm doing going up and down? Am I going toward and away from me? That's important. Rotation and anti-rotation. Any sport out there is using some rotation or anti-rotation components.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of sports. If you're not using any in yours, you are not into functional fitness. There is no functional fitness without rotation.
I had a theory that's not going to sound very good, but was that so there was a lot of your I'm not
Okay,
sold on that. I'm not
Okay,
sold
yeah.
on that one.
But the moon landing was fake.
Well, the first one. But don't start with me here. But that the reason that a lot of your competitive CrossFit athletes, many of them were, I mean, because the level of output they can do in that space is very high. But they're also very much kind of not useful in any other sport. There's a lot of them are failed athletes in other ways. They're not going to find a professional football player that's like, is choosing CrossFit over that. You can say money, whatever it is. But I think part of it is that say a football player is going to be very well suited at rotation, anti-rotation.
Oh, yes,
you have to be a diverse athlete. You have open loop systems with which you have to react to unpredictable things. And so I do think the competitive side of CrossFit fostered the specific growth of a specific type of athlete.
He fostered the grinders.
Yeah.
The people can just do work. The problem is most sports require you to adapt on the fly at a high level.
At a high level.
Absolutely. You can grind your way to a level.
There's plenty of CrossFit Games athletes that would smash most of us at lots of sports.
99+9%.
Lots of sports too.
But we're talking like the top level, like the pros.
For pro versus
and
pro
to be a pro, you have to be able to adapt on the fly. You see that from jiu-jitsu to MMA. Like there's that added stuff whereas CrossFit is just a grind, obviously.
So I kind of noticed that I thought that as the games started to introduce things like bench press, they started to introduce more carries and strongman stuff, dumbbell stuff. The reason I think they came up wasn't necessarily to fill the gap of the training system, I don't think, because I really think that it was because it hadn't been there very much and it was going to be really fucking hard for these people, right? So I do think that evolution, that getting added on the competitive side, when that got added, was very valuable on the ground in the affiliates, because you started to see affiliates bench press. Worry about developing the chest, for Christ's sake.
Yes, exactly.
The fact that, I mean, other than some push-ups, there was no thing hardly beyond body weight going on in the chest in most CrossFit affiliates, not frequently enough to give you any real development.
And
then you have shoulder problems and you fucking wonder why.
Well, and this is why we saw like the pecs tearing, like back in
3 years ago?
That was 4 years ago.
3, 4, yeah.
I remember we were in Spain when it happened with Rich. But I was like, guys, you just don't develop, you have not done any pure strength training in the frontal plane on the chest. So you don't, like, you might have big pecs, but they don't work, not at the maximum speed, because we saw mostly like the heavier and stronger guys were tearing their pecs because they couldn't take that.
Their own body weight, the heavier weight.
Well, they couldn't take that force rate of contraction at that speed. It was just way too much.
Yeah. So, but I do think that started to balance out.
Yes,
I do think that at the competitive level, and I think it had to, and not for the sake of the athletes, but for the sake of it being fucking hard.
No, plus me, what I liked about it is I knew that would trickle down to the affiliate level, which means we were going to start training people.
Something was going to change.
With some rotation, anti-rotation, with some dumbbell, because dumbbell force you to stabilize, the one-arm snatch and everything. At least you have some component of anti-rotation, sub-component of median axis. I was talking about left versus right. So there was an entire thing there that I was very happy to see. And this is something that lacks, for example, in powerlifting. They only lift with a barbell. And that's a problem because the imbalance left versus right can stay almost unnoticed for the longest time. Up until suddenly you have to do either lunges or, benching with dumbbells is always good because you can tell the difference, but you can still hide, but suddenly you do one arm bench, let's say with a barbell where you have to control, stuff like that. Suddenly you start to see the main issues that were hidden by just using the bar. Like Louis Simmons was a huge proponent of the bamboo bar, for example, of anything. Me, I would have used the bamboo bar, but then I would have used more unilateral stuff just to make sure that, because that's the only time you're going to truly see all that stuff, because you have so much rotation and rotation to control as well. Like all that stuff, those were good.
Yeah.
Good things. And so that's always what I look at in a program is, are you doing the other planes of movement then up?
Yeah.
So then up and down.
Yeah.
Right?
So you should be able to just objectively look at literally what work you're doing.
Yeah.
And as far as you can go planes of movement.
Right.
And you can go exercise type and go and just circle the shit you're not doing and do more of that.
Right. At least once a week, right?
And
some kind of rotation work.
What about this? I want to emphasize this too. I said do more of that. You can't just add that to your training, Paul.
Yes, exactly.
So
because
you have to adjust the ratio. So look at what you're doing too much of, do less of that.
Right, because remember, like otherwise what people are going to do is they're going to, at the end of the session,
add an accessory day.
When you're really tired, or even at the end of the session, they're going to do the movement or do like of this and do it without actually putting any effort into it. So of course they won't see progress, and so they'll just add it to add it, just to say I've added it, instead of actually doing the work of adding it. Because remember, you can't win that one with words.
You can't just
I don't
do the
care
work
if
either.
you
You have
show
to get
me
better
your
at it.
programming and go like, but I put it in. I don't care that you put it on paper. I care that you put it in your body. Yeah, so you have to do the work.
If that doesn't progress, it didn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're not doing the work if it's not progressing. Yeah. It's just like people use words all the time, which is normal because that's how we communicate. Yeah. I mean, but they keep using words to tell me like I did this, or they show me on the programming. I'm like, show me the video. And by the way, you're not progressing. It's not working. Yeah. So obviously, the work is not being done. I mean, like again, that reliance on words is the problem here. So don't just add it to the program. That's not enough. It has to become a thing of value in your training.
And if you're getting to this point because your training has been stuck, this should be the most important thing that you do.
That comes to your mind. Let me focus on this.
And that's but it's counterintuitive because you really have, say you're powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift's been going great, but now like shit's getting a little wrecked. You're not progressing. It's frustrating, and now you got to do this other shit. And what you need to do with this other shit is take all of the want that you have towards progressing your
I know, I look tired, but it's just the training.
Nobody
will
kill
me.
Yeah. I'll just cut to me only.
Yeah, exactly.
When Julien announced. But take all the want that you have on the powerlifting stuff, and then you need to understand that the only way that moves forward is if this gets better. And this is actually easier to get better at. Aside from the work,
because you suck at it.
There's no skill.
Exactly.
There's really not
and you
skill.
suck at it.
So you just, and that's a totally new stimulus.
And you know, like Kai Green always talks about thoughts becoming action that becomes body parts, basically. That's a little bit the idea, is like that importance that you place on all that stuff. That new exercise has to become like part of you. It's a thought that has to become an action. So it's just like, you know, when you at night you're thinking about your bench, you're thinking like before you go to bed, maybe how you're going to bench the next day and what's going to feel like. And that's what, by the way, you should. That's the only way to get better.
You're talking to a man with broken hand about how I need to be thinking about my bench all night. And trust me, Julien,
That's
fucking
what I'm
doing
about. Yeah. And so when there's those new exercises, I want you to do the same. At night to go like, how am I going to do this tomorrow? Because that's a weird movement. And so there's a lot of questions that need to be answered when you do the new movement and stuff like that. And so it's very important to take a critical look at your programming and see what you're really favoring so much because either it's part of your sport or because you like it so much versus what you're not doing, remembering that the body doesn't care that you do CrossFit. It doesn't care that you do strongman. It's just, it cares to survive. It cares to adapt to the environment. So you have to make sure that you create an environment where the body can adapt to the best of its capacities.
What else do we got on this?
Well, even in the plane of movement, there's a grip. That unfortunately is not talked about enough. So we have pronated, which is thumbs facing, neutral thumb facing up, and supinated, which is thumbs facing out. And it's very important to work all those three. And so what I like about farmers walk is the grip is neutral. Because again, going back to my 208 regionals at the games, all you saw was 90% was pronated. The barbell, everything was pronated. The bar exercises, everything is pronated, the pull-ups. And so when you do that, you're also gonna start developing your grip unevenly. You're going to start to develop weaknesses that will lead to elbows or shoulder issues. Or it starts here and then it basically wrecks you entirely. You have to work all three facets of the grip. It's very, very important.
Yeah, and it's very humbling if you've been deficient on it too. Like you can know very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
You start playing some grip games, and you'll be like, there'll be one spot where you're like, what in the fuck?
Right.
It might be something wide.
By the way,
it might be something.
that's a very good point.
It might be turned.
There's something else than pronated, supinated, neutral. There's open grip versus closed grip.
Yeah.
That's another one as well.
Hashtag girth.
Exactly right. Yeah. When you're used to it. You know what I mean? But open grip like this in wrestling, for example, or jiu-jitsu, it's always here. So it's always, even if I'm here, that I'm there. That's still open grip.
It's a very different thing than what you're training with a
when
barbell.
you do a barbell that is here.
Yeah.
So you have to develop that strength as well. Like people don't understand the difference between having a barbell, which I don't know what that is, I never dealt with it, but versus something here like an axle.
Yeah.
Your forearms will react differently.
Yeah.
It's a very, very different thing grip-wise. So it's very important to work on that as well. And if you have ever done grappling, you know the difference between the gi when you're completely closed versus a wrist which is open hand. It's not even close to being the same.
Well,
grip.
and there's some given when you get into things like gymnastics where, I don't know if you see what most gymnasts have exceptional, very diverse grip skills, actually. Most CrossFitters have very limited and very narrow range in their grip skills, meaning they have the small and they can kind of get the rings, and that's kind of the extent of it. And you can really see that that start to get weird with elbows.
Yes, but
shoulders.
you see that well, gymnasts, because they spend so much time stabilizing with open hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
There's
On the training that they
more
do,
diverse.
far more. So it always comes down to that. How diverse is your training? So that doesn't mean you should do 10%
You
of 10
don't need to do
things,
everything.
but some diversity is required in your training.
Yeah.
And so after that, we have the third corner, which is the energy systems, right? So that one has been debated forever, but what I'm going to do, so let me decompose it in real quick in 4 different ones.
Okay.
It's more complex than that, but you'll get the idea. You have like 80 to 100%, which is what they call strength, right? 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max is about strength endurance. 40 to 60 is endurance, and 1 to 40 would be muscle endurance, right? So like, imagine a marathon where you could run 6 hours, but you do it in 3. That's muscle endurance because it's not your lungs giving up. It's your capacity of your body to handle running that long. That's more muscle endurance. Endurance is doing Helen. You know, where your lungs just give up on you. Like you, strength-wise, you could keep going. You could still do more pull-ups or whatever, just your lungs give up on you. Strength endurance is the muscle giving up. Pure strength, it's more like it's a number of things. That's back to the performance box. But there's difference in there. So obviously, endurance and muscle endurance is more aerobic. Strength endurance is going to go toward the anaerobic. So there's a little bit there. There's a number of things that go into this, but what I'm going to include to that box is the lactate now, right? The importance. So really, if you look, there's different. It's interesting. There's really 3 different energy system. You have the creatine, which is, and then early on in the pure anaerobic stuff, like, very explosive, you go to creatine phosphate. So that's usually the first 30 seconds because that's how long it takes. It's really the first 7 seconds if you look in sprinting. But after that, you start to use more toward oxygen-based. So now you move to lactate. It's not glucose because they used to tell you it's creatine phosphate and then you move to glucose. I said that and I was wrong. You move to glucose in the sense of glucose is a substrate for lactate. So actually you go from creatine phosphate to lactate. And eventually once you can't use lactate anymore, once there's a drop in that, you go toward fats as fuel. And so the body wants you to use lactate. This is where most of the training should happen. So I found that interesting because if you look, it's about like 30 seconds. Even for powerlifting, it would be interesting because I would be around like 3, 4, 5 reps?
Probably.
Right.
By the time you have a big breath, bite down, poop,
right, you get 5 reps. So I find it interesting that we all know that usually 3, 4, 5 reps to build strength are better than the singles. Singles is relying mostly on creatine phosphate, and the body wants you to go on lactate. That's why also running past a certain number of hours is probably, and you start to go to our fat, is not optimum for you either. It's all about lactate production and lactate clearance. Lactate consuming, not clearance, consuming. So when we go into that, we can go like producing lactate is more the type 2B fibers, more like the white fast glycolytic fibers, and consuming lactate is more the type 1 fibers, the slow oxidative type. So I'm going to add that to the energy system because I believe that's the true energy system that matters.
Probably a more suitable way of viewing the energy systems as a whole.
Yeah, and think? Because they go into hypoxia and all the stuff, but I'm like, you're missing the point though.
That doesn't come first.
Right, no, it doesn't. What comes first is lactate.
Yeah.
Glycolysis.
Glycolysis?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's so many ways of saying this. Is really the main energy pathway. So that's the one you want to focus on, glucose into lactate. And so training means, if you want to train heavy, train like a 30-second AMRAP, because you're still going to get 5-6 reps in there.
Yeah.
So the entire concept there that I find very interesting. Like that's what I've been doing with my training lately, because I realize I spend way too much time toward the creatine phosphate, like that 1 to 2 reps.
Yeah.
And which is necessary as well for certain things, because, not to go into that too much, but like the very explosive movement also produce, we're going toward the MCT4s, and so toward the brain it also seems to matter.
I think, in my opinion, the heavy singles are beyond the point of diminishing returns often, except I think there's a prediction mechanism in the brain that matters.
Yes.
Having something really fucking heavy on my weight
often
enough and fighting through it means that when I'm doing the work that I should be doing at, say, sets of 5, 3s or 5s, that my first thought is, this is not unfamiliarly heavy. Yes. There's a patterning there where knowing you're in control, and then I think there's always value. Any good strength progression system, I know you got some heavy weight on you from time to time.
But if you look number-wise, like percentage-wise,
it doesn't
to get stronger, it's 4 to 10.
And actually, as people get, and you'll see too, as people get stronger, they're doing less high percentage work than most people think. Much.
But if I look at a guy who became so strong, for example, Ronnie Coleman, so strong as a bodybuilder, the strongest bodybuilder, he was going from like 4, 5 till 12, and that seems to fit most of the powerlifting programs I've ever seen. It was usually the real work was happening from 4 to 10. Even a German system, 10 of 10, like 10. That like if you go heavy, you go from 4 to 10. Chances are you're gonna get stronger.
Yeah, and I think the heavy stuff, other than for like mental, understanding the fight, understanding to rise to other than that, I think it's to prepare you for the test of a heavy single. Because if eventually you have to test with a heavy single, that can't be your first fucking single.
No.
But other than that, I do think that's overused.
You know why? Because neural output.
Yeah.
That goes back to the performance box that we did a podcast on. You gotta have neural output. So that's the risk about going with 10s, is you might start, because I noticed that with me a little bit, you might start to go down the scale on neural output. And then, remember, we don't train for the weights, we train for life.
Yeah.
You don't wanna go into losing your capacity for fight. So once in a while, it has to be fucking heavy. But maybe instead of singles, like 3, 4s, but it's depending on what you do. But still, it's gonna have to, once in a while, you gotta go heavy.
So the point is not to live in any one tunnel here.
Never.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, balance is always the key. Balance is always the key.
What are we missing here?
So the fourth corner, which was the type of contractions.
Contraction types.
Right, yeah, contraction types. Why? Because eccentric actually matters a lot. And that's, again, just to use CrossFit again, but you had very, very little eccentric in CrossFit. Everything was about dropping the weight and do stuff like that.
Yeah.
You need some.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of training, like a lot of static training that's been done involving a lot of eccentric. You actually produce way more strength, way more force. On eccentric than you do on concentric. It's quite a big difference between the two, which makes sense because you have to be able to lower the weight before you go up.
I also think that is the eccentric load or contraction is really one of the real pieces for keeping yourself safe. And I think that when that thing slides, like if that starts skidding, like that's when you see people. That's when you see your friend, powerlifter friend, shaking.
Yep.
You know,
and they're just popping the leg. The eccentric just went there. So it's very dangerous not to have a strong eccentric, whatever system you want to call it, on a specific lift, because you always drop down and all that stuff. You should spend some time making sure the deadlift. Everybody lifts and drops the bar. No. Take it down.
Yeah.
Use that extra energy to work the eccentric on the way down. You'll develop your hammies, your glutes, your back in a way that you just can't really do without the eccentric.
You're not saving anything for yourself.
Not really. No, and especially over time, you're going to limit your growth.
Yeah, and on a fundamental level, I would always see a high percentage of overextended deadlifts at the top.
Yeah.
Inherently.
Yeah.
And then when you drop, from an extended lumbar, It's no different than catching that load. It's kind of in reverse.
Yeah,
You're putting the force up and now it's going
your
away.
Spine goes like this. So I've always asked people not to drop from the top. But I think it was Chris Duffin.
Unless you did something really awesome.
Yes, but
I'm into that. Yeah. But you can't live that.
But by the way, when you do that, you still come down first and you take the load.
My thing was always I would teach always lower it all if you can. Yeah. You don't have to do it slow, but just low. And if you're going to drop, my thing was always break at the hips.
Yeah.
Break at the hips, get your chest somewhat pulled down, and then do it.
But I think it was Chris Duffin who changed some powerlifting program just by having people lower the weight on the deadlift. So he didn't change anything. It's just the only thing you could not drop the weight. You had to lower it, and he gave, I think, some tempo. And that increase in eccentric alone was giving a lot of progress.
Well, and it's a good, actually, like you said, that tool, that's actually a really good way to modulate that part of your training system, is you can look at, I'm doing none. Well, let me do 1 second eccentric on every set that I do today.
You know who does that a lot is Martin Lissis, who is the world's strongest man. He has a face in his training block for eccentric.
Which is, I think, how it's structures, how you're going to build. Have that in and then build from it.
And you know what's in a slow eccentric? The hold. Like that isometric, like if you do squat, your upper back has to work the entire time on the way down. So through movement, but it still has to hold and everything. That's a hard one. Like a block of eccentric is never bad. So at least add some with tempo. It's always good. It's because obviously isometric is a third contraction. And that's something that you should work on well. Isometrics. So you can take that through carries. Take care of that through carries. But just to go back.
There's also value, I think, in isolation and some of that stuff too, though. I think if you are doing any sort of loose machine, bodybuilding, global gym stuff, that's an opportunity to give yourself just extra work within that window.
And that's why we like the songs.
Make it worth your while. That's why we like the songs. That's why we like the time
under tension.
Is I'll go and if I can't contract concentrically anymore, I'm going to hold the fucking thing and then I'm going to let it down slow and then I'm going to go.
Dorian Yates made you work on eccentric when you couldn't concentrate.
We were just talking today on the calf raises here is we can lower the pin so we can do calf raises 75% of the range of the motion into the pin and then hold and you can put so much force and that motherfucker ain't moving and to be able to have points like that in your range of motion, it's fun, interesting way to train, and it's going to give you a diverse type of strength.
And I remember we talked about isometric and the fight mode. Actually in isometric you cannot stop the fight mode. So just quick, like a dynamic movement, which means concentric, eccentric, it's what I call dynamic movement. Eventually you level off the fight levels. We saw with isometric that it doesn't. It just keeps on going up and up and up and up. So finishing anything with just holding the weight for a few seconds makes you go into that extra oomph into the fight mode that leads to progress in life. Again, you're just finding a little bit harder. And those things are important. I remember Captain Kirk. Not my hero, the Captain, Kirk Karkowski. Why my hero? Because, come on, Eddie Murphy, that hasn't changed. He was like, when he did 1,000 pounds for two, right? At the end, he was like, let me hold it. I want to hold it. Because you just fight a little bit longer under the weight. That's a good one.
And what I noticed with isometrics too is if you do them like, they're really, some of them are fun to do like, pulls against pins with the barbell, stuff like that too. The whole whole body isometrics like that are fucking maddening to me. Like it's but what I notice is, like you said, that your fight mode just goes up and up. Is my literally heart rate, blood pressure. It's like living if you're doing it right, it's like living in the sticking point of your fucking lift. And that is not the most awesome place to be. But it's a place that if you're familiar with, and you go there and you win and you fight there often enough, that's a piece that will move that sticking point forward.
And again, you're comfortable with uncomfortable. Like there's a number of things we can do with isometric and eccentric. So don't overlook those. So again, look at your programming and see the stuff you're absolutely not doing. And just by replacing what you're doing too much of with what is it you're not doing, you will see progress. I know it sounds very simple when I say it, but it works. It works.
So how many reps and sets?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, we got to get you going here. We actually got in about an hour.
There's a clock there. I like it. Oh, there you go.
I don't get too comfortable. It might not have worked at all. But
let's not go that far.
Yeah, we'll be all right. Well, you got a seminar to do. We got to meet up and plan out tonight. So that's going to wrap up. So from StrongFit HQ, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you in a couple days.
So you just full-blown skip the whole selling part.
Oh, shit.
No, I'm joking.
No, wait, no, fuck this. You get up and leave.
There you go.
You get up and leave then.
Yeah. Because he's going to be like, finally, I get to do it without being disturbed.
All right, you guys were listening to this whole thing. Here's what happened. I skipped the thing, actually just because we were in a hurry, and I forgot that Julien basically clowns me for doing every single fucking week. So Julian's gonna ignore me, and he was gonna fucking clown on this pitch and sabotage it the whole time. So I skip it, and he's mad because I skipped it. It is fucking insane. So, line Julian's pocketbook, please, by going to strongfit.com, strongfitequipment.com, strongfitequipment.eu. We do have sandbags, shirts, and all that stuff there. We're selling ropes out of EUend.com, correct, Julien? Correct. So then we have ropes, sandbags for sale at both of those places. Julian's functional integration training template is up at strongfit.com in the online classroom there. You'll also find his one-on-one coaching stuff and I think all of our other online program stuff. What else am I forgetting? Support the podcast at podcast.strongfit.com. You can join the YouTube membership area at youtube.com/strongfit. Tell a friend. We'll see you next week.